I was not expecting that at all.
Life happens.
Right.
And we're not in control. It's never about the addiction. It's about we have lost connection.
If I just have these great jobs, if I have all this money, then I'll be happy.
They're not living their lives how I think they should.
How may I serve? Or another way to say that is, what's up? For today's conscious conversation, I'm really grateful to have our beautiful guest, Brandy Lueders of The Grateful Chef. Brandy has this amazing company, and it's really started with organic roots, if you will, in many ways. And the pleasure is mine of being able to be the recipient often of getting your meals that are wholesome, that are real food, and to be able to feed myself and to nurture my family. It is such a delicious treat, and it's actually extravagant, to be able to find something that's not processed, that's so wholesome, and just such a beautiful way to love on myself and my body. So to have you as a guest today and to explore food, like what is food in relationship to our bodies, our lives? What role does it play? And in many ways, it can play a positive role. We can use it as negative. It's like anything.
Right.
And so I just love the idea of having you here, sweetheart.
I'm so happy you invited me. This is so fun. Thank you, Rita.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
My pleasure. So, The Grateful Chef, tell us more.
So The Grateful Chef is the name of my business, and this will be 6 years, just a couple days ago, that I've been doing this, although I've been cooking since I can remember. So The Grateful Chef is a business that came to me through a friend initially that didn't have time to cook and said, can you cook extra food like you make for your family and make it for us and I'll pay you for it. And at the time I was I was a stay-at-home mom, which was the hardest job I've ever had and still have. But anyway, so she said, can you make extra food? And I said, yes. And then she said, well, I have a neighbor who is interested. Could you make some for her as well? And I said, sure, no problem. And just slowly, just very organically and slowly, this kind of came to happen and has morphed over the years. And now we have a commercial kitchen we work out of and make food for many families each week. So, and it's my passion. It's my full-time job. I would never want to be doing anything else. I can't imagine doing anything else.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm so happy I got this opportunity to share my passion with so many other people, including you.
Oh, again, it is such a gift. So tell us a little bit more about the whole transformation into food and your relationship with food. And you have a background as a chef and being able to go into that some more, sweetheart.
So my relationship with food, I would say, started off, like I said, when I was very young in high school. And I think food started for me as a form of curiosity. Really? It was just curious about it. So the way to kind of work with that curiosity is just to explore it. And so at home, I would do that. My parents let me cook, for our family of 6. And I started doing that probably when I was in junior high, I would say, and just, played around with food in that way, learned, how does this work with this, and made many failures.
Wow.
But also it kind of got me excited about food. And I also think that, and I've been this way also since I was quite young, an expressive person. I express myself in many ways, as you can tell with the tattoos. It's morphed into many things, it's just who I am and how I express what's inside of me. And the food just kind of rose to the surface and became one of those ways of which I started expressing myself.
Wow.
And that happened at a young age. So I would say I didn't really know that I was an artist, but I think I am. And that became my art form. So that's my relationship with food. And also not just the art and the expression and the curiosity. Also, I've also always been a very active person since I was young and interested in health. And I think that food also became a way for me to get in touch with my body through what I was eating and how I was preparing it. So all of those things intermixed is what my relationship with food is. And obviously, feeding people is a form of love. So, to be able to cook for my family and set the meal down on the table and have everybody enjoy the fact that I did it and that they're enjoying, or not, but mostly enjoying what I just made. It's just all of those things intermixed are what feeds my soul. Like that's it for me. And I discovered that at a pretty young age. So I just went with it.
Wow.
And that's why, like you said, I did go to culinary school right out of high school. And I just, I went with that passion because I really didn't have, nothing else was speaking to me in such a way.
Right.
So luckily I had a great home ec teacher up in my small town in northern Iowa who said, there's this culinary arts program down in Des Moines at DMAC. You should check it out. And so I said, okay. And she kind of is the one who, led the way. And I came down here and checked it out. And I immediately was just like, yep, that's what I'm doing.
Wow.
And so I did it.
Wow.
And the story then just kind of keeps going. I've done nothing but food my whole life.
Wow.
That's been my thing.
And if I'm not mistaken, you did food in a very different capacity than what you're currently doing.
I've done food all over the board, which I think is what really serves, now looking back, everything has served its purpose to bring me to where I am now. There's been times where I've hated,
Right.
each aspect. I've done everything. I moved out to Portland, Oregon shortly after graduating from DMAC and worked in restaurants there. And if anyone knows, the life of someone who works in a restaurant, it's not easy and the hours are not good. Your days off are split. I mean, it's not, but if you're somebody like I am who loves what you do, you don't, at least then, I was much younger and that
Right.
helps too.
Right.
But I wasn't really thinking about those things. I was just doing what I loved.
Right.
But yes, so I've cooked in restaurants and I've done that form. And then I also switched over when I moved back to the Midwest to a whole different style of cooking, which is on a massive scale in a food service establishment. So I learned making beautiful plates of food for individuals. And then I learned how to cook on a grand scale for hundreds of people.
Wow.
And the thing I loved about that job, as silly as it sounds, is after doing the restaurant thing, like I said, with the schedule the way it was, I enjoyed a different pace, which was a Monday through Friday job, first time I'd ever had that, and, good hours and all that. So I said, okay, I'll try that on. I'll see what this is all about. And it was just totally different. And at the time, I would say, it wasn't my favorite because they did require a little bit more recipe following, and that's a little bit too confined for me, but it was a good experience. And I did the food service thing for several years, even here in Des Moines. Before I was a stay-at-home mom, before I had my kids, I worked in food service. And that cooking on that grand scale is what helped me to bring that forward into what I do now.
Wow.
So it's just all, I look back at the pieces and how they fit together and I think, okay, that served its purpose and that served its purpose. And
that's one thing that I really appreciate is often life takes us in places and we have no idea why we're doing something,
right.
What it'll contribute, what it will morph into, but just really surrendering and trusting the process of life.
Right.
Is such a rich piece because then we don't have to make where we are now wrong. But there's something to be learned or something that can offer us self-knowledge that I really appreciate about the journey of life.
Yep.
It makes it really rich. So here you were then, but working at the scale of industrial, and then of course becoming a mother
Right.
and a stay-at-home mom.
Mm-hmm.
Completely different job.
Yep, completely different job. Mm-hmm.
Yet so important. One of the things then about organically starting to make food for other people, can you talk more about making food with love? Food is a meditation, food is an offering, because really it's my perception that whatever we do, when we bring our hearts to it, when we bring an openness, and when we're able to do it in love, that makes our life, or whatever it is that we're engaged in, the offering.
Yeah, definitely. It started off with my family, and to this day, even though I cook for, hundreds of families, my favorite thing to this day is to make a beautiful meal for my own family. And unfortunately, with as busy as I am with everything else, it doesn't happen as often as I would like it to, but that's another story. So when it does, I just love it. I mean, it's setting the stage. It's about me being in an inspired state and working with, high quality ingredients around me and just setting the stage, doing what I love and creating this nurturing meal that I then share with other people. And I truly believe that that energy, from that I put into it crosses over to everyone else that's receiving it. As you have said when you've come to pick up food from me, and I've heard this from several people, if you could only see the smiles of everyone as they're walking out of your establishment, and that's that,
Yes.
and yes, so food is love, food is sharing, food is, for me, putting my time and energy into something that I love and knowing that this is going to nurture those who receive it.
Absolutely. Even if those individuals who are receiving it, perhaps they live alone,
Mm-hmm.
and yet to be able to take this magnificent creation that you've so lovingly prepared, where even they might not take the time in their own busy lives to create in that form, but to be able to take that and bring that in, or if they're sitting down with loved ones and schedules get so crazy and
Right.
they have real wholesome food. Tell me about the ingredients, like why you do pick
Mm-hmm.
wholesome foods, whole foods,
Right.
and your ingredient list doesn't go on for miles from a standpoint of ingredients that you can't even pronounce.
Right. No, absolutely not.
Right. So can you talk more about that?
Sure. So when I first started this business, I put it out there that I would cook for other families in the same way that I cook for my own family. And I feel like I have pretty high standards in the way that I cook for my own family. So I wanted to just truly share the way that I cook for my family, but for others. And so that means that when I'm out grocery shopping, I do look for the highest quality. And as you said, it doesn't always, it doesn't hardly ever include many more than a handful ingredients. I can honestly tell you at the kitchen now, when we cook for families, we maybe open up a can of coconut milk. If people only saw us struggle, the can opener, because we don't, it's our biggest, we can't get the can opener to work. We use these big cans that I get from the Asian grocery store. And so anyway, coconut milk and sometimes diced tomatoes. Other than that, we don't use any preservatives. We don't use any canned. There's nothing fake in our food. And I just, like I said, that's the way I feed my own family, and I want to share that with everyone else. And sometimes I don't always promote it as far as saying what's organic, because that's just too wordy. But we do use many organic foods, anything from started with dried beans to, anything I can get my hands on.
Right.
They're quality ingredients that we use. And if people could get a glimpse into the kitchen, and maybe this is something that would be fun to do sometime, is just take a picture so you all could see it. but our produce that we get is just massive. I mean, we start with so much.
Right.
And that so much, once three or four of us get our hands on it, go into everyone's food. And we really are filling your pans with lots of goodness. I promise.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I love that because I know that not everyone, that's hard for people. You know, even when you go out to restaurants to eat, it's just not, it's so hard to find. So I love that we're giving everyone their weekly dose of good nutrients in the food that we feed them.
That's another thing, going out to eat. It's I love having food prepared for me, but often I'm disappointed.
Right.
Because, there's so much salt in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I like salt, but
Right.
it's just an infusion, or I don't know. I often want the food at a restaurant to be better than it is. And so our bodies desire, if we're in a place of alignment and we're in a place of wholesome, that's what we're going to crave.
Right.
And I also want to acknowledge the flip side of that. If we're in a place of disconnect, we will crave that which keeps us disconnected.
Right.
And so it's interesting, what is our relationship with food, and to be able to consider it. So it's not making it wrong if all we want is the food with preservatives and the foods that have MSG, monosodium glutamate, or different things in it. But it's really a thoughtful consideration to, like, okay, what is this doing to my body? So can you address that some more?
Yeah, definitely. I totally know what you mean. I mean, when you're in that place of disconnect and you just feel like grabbing a bag of chips or just,
Right.
but a lot of times it's right before bed, and that's even worse. Except you wake up and you say, "What did I just do?" But I also do know the flip side of that, which is the more you feed yourself, the clean, healthy food. I'll give you a personal example, is I've really been playing around a lot, probably in the last 3 or 4 months, with fermentation.
Right.
So I make my own kefir, my own kombucha, and I haven't gotten to making the fermented vegetables yet, but I do buy them from a local company called Agriculture that I really enjoy. And what I have found, and even my partner John has found, is that once we've started eating these foods, especially the vegetables, for some reason, we hardly have a meal where we don't include that, whether it's on our eggs for breakfast or, lunch or dinner. And so there's something in that, when it's doing what it does in your body, you sense it and you're like, I want more of that. But I also understand if you're in that pattern of like you said, disconnect, which we all experience at one time or another.
Right.
You are eating more of the soothing yourself with the chips and the ice cream and the other foods.
Right.
So
One of the recent experiences I had, my son Matthew is a trainer for CrossFit, and he wanted to have an experience just eating paleo.
Mm-hmm.
And so for his birthday month, he asked my husband Carl and I that part of what he wanted for his birthday was us to join him in eating paleo for the month.
Right.
Well, March has 31 days. It's not just like February 28, sometimes 29. But it was fascinating to me for the first 2 weeks especially.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like I didn't already eat mostly clean.
Right.
But the difference in switching, and I can't even tell you the chemical process or what was going on scientifically, but just by really cleaning up the food that was put into the body even more, like no processed, and I mean down to no breads, different things. It was, to begin with, I would eat, and you could eat as much as you want, but even though I was full, I wasn't satisfied.
Mm.
So there were like some additional things, like my body was transforming,
Right.
shifting over. So then, when it came time for the 30 days to be up, and I'm still, here it is now, June, and that was March, I'm still figuring out my relationship with food to my body.
Right.
Because that which I would typically go for, or even once in a while the chips and so on, often, and it's not making chips wrong. Like if I want them,
Right.
I'd have them, but things just changed. So it's often, can we get comfortable with being uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
and try something new on?
Right.
And that can be done with food and cooking and recipes. And it helps to look at it like an adventure.
Right.
Like, let's try this on. It's an
Yeah.
adventure.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just fascinating.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely agree with you. I've had my own personal experience recently with that exactly, and that is that I personally decided for my health, there's been many changes I've made over the last probably 6 to 8 months with my health, many of which have been wonderful and seen great results. But there's still a few things kind of hanging out that still, the only thing I have not changed is my way of eating. So I like to have, I'm a chef, I like to cook all foods, and I don't like to be restricted. That does not feel good to me at all. But for the sake of my health, I finally came down and I said, the only thing I haven't tried is to eliminate a few things that I was having to see how this makes me feel. And so for the last about 2 weeks now, doing that, I have been doing no dairy and no gluten. So essentially paleo, but I still have been having some rice and stuff. So not even as strict as paleo,
okay.
but just eliminating the gluten and eliminating the dairy out of my diet, which really I'm not used to having to think about my food before I eat it.
Right.
And now I do, and I'm still working on how that feels.
Right.
Can't say I really like it, but
Right.
still wrapping my mind around that. But what I do know personally is that I feel great. And that's almost like it's good, but it's like, darn it, I wish it wasn't that. So I will say that I have felt wonderful since doing this. And then we had, last weekend was really busy for us, and the holiday weekend, and my parents were in town. And so I broke out of that and we just had fun. And, I don't have an allergy to the point of where anything majorly bad happens to me. I just have learned that with, really simplifying my diet, I do feel much better.
I so get it.
So I'm still wrapping my brain around that and seeing how does that fit into my life. But I do know that a lot of times we're given these things, for me personally, it's that I cook for so many people. So, and I do cook for a lot of people who have certain allergies or food restrictions. So it's really good for me. Sometimes we have to be the ones that try these things on personally so that then we can go forth and be compassionate and share with others, and learn, and I can, consistently reinvent things that I offer. And a lot of times this has taken the form of me having to experience something myself.
Exactly. I also want to acknowledge within the paleo experience, of course, in Iowa, allergies can be a thing, and they have been a thing for my husband Carl. He completely no allergies with the experience of changing his diet in that form. And so, again, not being obsessive.
No.
I don't like being controlled, but being aware is just a fascinating aspect. Bringing consciousness
Right.
to what is it that I'm doing, what is my relationship with it. And I just deeply appreciate that. One other thing that I want to explore is food as a communion. Food is coming together, and you had already started to talk about it, how one of your favorite things still is being able to make a meal and to be able to share it with your family. And food is something that, I don't know of any breatharians personally, of
Mhm.
people who can just live off of breathing,
Right.
you know? So food is pretty much a common denominator that we as people use it as a place of sustaining the body and feeding the body. And such joyous occasions. And whether it's people coming together to watch a football game
Right.
and whatever the story is, oh, we're having a holiday and Thanksgiving feast or whatever it is,
Mhm.
food is such a common denominator and such a beautiful way to love on each other and love on ourselves. And it is fascinating of the time it can take to prepare something compared to picking up the bag of chips.
Right.
There's a big difference. There's a commitment that it can be.
Right.
Granted, you can get the celery and cut it up into chunks,
Mhm.
pieces, but to make the hummus or, it is a fascinating exploration
Right.
because we all have 24 hours in a day.
Yeah.
And what are we going to create in those 24 hours? And what is that going to look like? So every day is an adventure. What am I going to create today? For myself, I love having the clarity that today I want to create in love.
Mhm.
But what's the form of the love going to look like?
Right.
My mom's grandmother used to have this saying. I didn't know her, but she used to share with my mom, you take an egg, you beat it all day, what do you serve? An egg.
Mhm.
So you can spend this much time on food prep, or you can spend this much time on food prep.
Right.
And it's all really a lifestyle and a choice, and yet there are certain things that you can make that don't have to be an entire day in the kitchen,
Right.
crock pot, different offerings along that line. What are your thoughts as far as time and the value of whole food?
My thoughts on that are I have experience in both of the grabbing of the fast foods constantly and the taking 2 or 3 hours out of my time on a Sunday morning to pull everything out of my fridge and to chop it all up and to have it ready. My thoughts on it are that these days we spend so much wasted time, and I'm, just as guilty of it as anyone else. We sit around on our phones, on the internet, we're on social media, we spend all this time, and at the end of that, I ask myself, how do I feel about that time I just spent? Other than maybe sitting there and relaxing, not that great. Like it didn't really bring that much satisfaction to me. But that time I would take and pull everything out of my fridge and set it out and chop it up and just put it into containers. When I do that and I know that we're set for a good portion of the week,
Right.
I feel so good. Was it work? Absolutely. Did it take time? Absolutely. I'm not going to lie, it did take time. But it brings me such a great satisfaction. I would rather use my time like that than just sitting around with just emptiness. This is serving a purpose. We're
Right.
nurtured throughout the week because I take the time to do that. It's been worth it every time.
Right.
And I'm just like anyone else. I need a little poking and prodding. I need to do it.
Right.
But it's always been wonderful when I do it.
I want to talk about what a stressor it is when, if you are working or whatever and you come home and wait, and you can go ahead and you can grab something that's
Right.
prepared or however that works. So it can be just such oh, I'm coming home and there's something in the crock pot, and just feeling loved and valued and supported.
Right. I think if you're able to somehow take doing that and turn it into a ritual both for yourself and know that, whoever you're sharing it with or not, it's kind of how you said, it's how you reframe it, how you think about it. And
Yes.
I'm just as
Yes.
guilty of that. I wake up in the morning and we're always so rushed, and I have to feed my kids breakfast. So if I'm rushed and I'm running behind, I'm kind of tense and angry the whole time. But if I can maybe wake up 10 to 15 minutes earlier and give myself just that little bit of breathing room to actually enjoy the process, we all get along so much better, and everything is, it's a pretty huge difference.
I know. I get
So
it.
it's just kind of, once again, placing your importance. We all have to make those decisions throughout our day.
Right.
And I think that food and the ritual of creating food is another one of those things.
A Course in Miracles has the lesson, I have given everything, all the meaning that it has. So if I really connect with something as a burden, this is an I have to,
Right,
it can be so painful.
right.
It can really be devastating
Mm-hmm.
and such a drag. But recognizing that I am feeding, I am nurturing myself. It's kind of like my ritual when I get out of the shower. I often put on oil and just cover my entire body.
Mm-hmm.
Just really having the intention of loving my body, thanking it for health and vibrancy,
Mm-hmm.
and just really infusing it with love. And it just is a love language that I can really do with my body to thank it. And food the same way, brushing our teeth. Like,
Right.
it doesn't have to be glamorous
Right.
at all, any of it. But again, making sure that in awareness, I have given everything all the value that it has, and knowing that feeding this body is such an important gift, and I deserve to be fed and nurtured.
Right.
But often, food can be a deserving thing. It's like we, in our own minds, not even consciously.
Right.
And that's one thing that I love about this conversation, is because often we'll use food in a place of unconscious, like feeding the whole. It's subconscious. It's under the radar, if you will. And so to be able to talk about, in awareness, what am I choosing? And is there room for a new possibility?
Right.
Or exploring a what if?
Right. Yep. It's just all about, like you said, trying something new. I mean, adventure. Yeah, thinking outside the box. We all could use a good dose of that, for sure. Just shaking things up a little bit. Saying, just today, instead of doing this, I'm going to try this on.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's when some of the greatest things happen.
I also want to explore talking about recipes, because for myself, I struggle following recipes,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know if it's because I hate being told what to do, but it might be.
Right.
I'm fine with rules as long as they're mine.
Ha ha ha.
Aside from that, it's something that I just really enjoy with cooking. Often I can't even make the same thing twice.
Right.
How do you feel about it as a chef?
I don't use recipes at all. I do have many cookbooks. I love my cookbook collection. I love sitting down and looking through, especially I'm visual, so the prettier the pictures in the cookbook, the better. I love that. And I will flip through and I will get inspiration, for something. Oh, I never thought of that idea. But and I do look at the ingredient list. But then from there, I just do my, I just go my own way with it. And I don't eat that much for baked goods personally, breads and candies and stuff like that. That's just not my taste. So therefore I don't cook those things. If I did, I might have to then follow a recipe a little bit closer, because baking is a little bit of a different experience. But as far as cooking goes, no, it's just, and I know it's rare. I do believe we all are given gifts. Mine happens to be to know intuitively how to pair spices and mix things up. It's just, I can't even explain it. But when I'm cooking, it's like the brain is shut off. I'm just doing, it's coming in. People will say, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to do that? I'll say, I don't know. It'll just all happen when it happens. Yeah.
Oh, that's terrific.
And I'm very visual. So, like, that's why when I do the shopping and stuff, I have to look at, you know, how many red bell peppers do I need to make 100 of this dish, you know?
How the heck do you figure out proportions?
It's once again, it's just something that I don't know how to explain it other than it just I have no part of it. I just stand back and it comes to me and I am the doer, but
Right.
and it oftentimes turns out pretty right on the nose.
I also want to acknowledge, though, with all of your training, even as a child, cooking for your family and all of that, there's a foundation.
Right. Oh yeah.
To build.
Oh,
So
definitely.
I don't want to minimize the expertise.
Right.
Because I will share with you, I too go intuitively within
Mhm.
my cooking,
Right.
but I don't have the same foundation.
Right.
But I love food. Oh my goodness, do I love food?
Yeah.
It is, oh my goodness, I love food. We deserve really good food.
Mhm.
I want to talk about listening to the body in relationship with food because there was a time period in my life that I did the vegetarian thing. I don't recall exactly, 2 to 4 years, somewhere
Oh, wow.
there.
Mhm.
And then my body was done. I needed food.
Right.
Like when I needed meat or protein, like more
Right.
than I was getting. And so, not making anyone wrong who chooses the vegetarian route at all, so respectful of that. I just want to acknowledge the more we actually open up to being mindful of what our body wants. For example, my body doesn't want 20 sundaes,
Right.
ice cream sundaes, if I'm listening to it.
Right.
It doesn't want to be fed certain things, and my body cycles. So sometimes I may be craving more meat, and sometimes I may not want any meat at all on a given day.
Right.
And so just listening to that ebb and flow of what am I hungry for, not just like how, not just within the mind, but what does my body want?
Right.
That in and of itself is intimacy.
Right.
And often we as individuals, we crave intimacy in our life because it's really about connection. But I love the exploration of how to use food to get even more intimate with ourselves and our connection with ourselves.
Right.
Can you speak to that as well?
I experience that through, if I'm eating a gorgeous salad, I'm also being a visual person. I truly believe the more colorful. I mean, nothing makes me happier than I even went out for John and I and we each picked out our own bowl and they're giant. I mean, mine is giant and his is, we each have different tastes. So we, just like picking your coffee mug, we went out and picked out our own salad bowls. So we have them at home and they're giant. But in these salad bowls that we picked out because we love the bowl, I make these gorgeous salads.
Wow.
And we will literally sit down and eat that for dinner.
Wow.
And so it's in a bowl that we love, put all the toppings on it that make us feel good. And there's so many things about that when we're done, we're just like, that was really nurturing. I feel really good.
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, I also know, I'm craving a Bebop's burger,
Okay.
and doing that. And in the moment, it feels good. And then it doesn't take long until afterwards it kicks in and you're just like, I feel kind of gross right now.
Right.
And so I do think, and it's taken me a long time because I'm stubborn. And so that listening to my body has taken a long time because I don't like to be told what to do even by my own body. I'm like, no, if I want to eat cheese and gluten and, all the pasta in the world, I will. But my body is saying, well, that's fine, but, it doesn't really serve you very well right now.
Right.
And so it has been a process even for me to listen, but I do know just through experimentation, the more simple and clean that I eat, I do feel considerably better afterwards. And it is that getting in touch and then you kind of experiment, because that's what we do.
Right.
And you kind of go the other way and you just feel it out. And then it's a choice from there on. It's always a choice.
Right. It's a choice once we have the awareness.
Right.
We can only make a new choice if we're aware.
Right.
And so I love this part of the conversation as well because it's like, yeah. And again, I too am like you. I hate to be told, don't do this. It's like, no. But I've made it a practice. Like, okay, oh my gosh, I want a cup of coffee. Oh, and I bring it into my body, bring it into my field, like I feel into it. Body, do you want coffee? And just, it's been a practice, but often learning, even though I may think I want coffee, I want to want coffee, my body doesn't want coffee.
Right.
And every once in a while my body's like, yeah, let's have that in the little piece of sweet or something.
Right.
Or whatever. Again, it's not about obsessing, but it's about, can we develop that intimacy? And I love that. The thought of intimacy within food is just such a glorious exploration. And it's not very common. It's not what we're really taught.
No, definitely not. I think that is just something that just evolves with most people over time.
Absolutely. Excellent.
Yeah.
I love this sharing. Is there anything else that you would want to explore or share with people regarding food, creation, an invitation for them to look at within their relationship with food in their lives?
I would just say my invitation would be to just try to use food as a way to play and to have fun.
Yeah.
And just try to do that and see how that feels.
Right.
Try to just go to the grocery store and, like I said, if you pick out things like fresh strawberries and blueberries and colored bell peppers and baby spinach, and you put all that stuff in your cart and you bring that stuff home, just that color spectrum right there is guaranteed to put a smile on your face. So if it puts a smile on your face, think of what it's going to do inside of your body.
Right. Very good point, sweetheart. That's
so
beautiful.
just have fun and just really, it's kind of like you're saying about an intimacy with the food. Look at it. How does that make me feel? Does that make me happy? It's probably going to make me feel happy too.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. This was wonderful. Thank you, Rita.
Absolutely. I love you, sweetheart.
I love you too.